Welcome to Business is Good, the podcast all about what it means to be in business in the 21st century. Small and medium-sized businesses are the lifeblood of the UK economy, and globally they can and will have a huge impact on society, the economy and how we live our lives. From technology disruption to reworking a solution to solve the world's biggest problem, Business is Good is a podcast about what it takes to be successful and how every business defines that in different ways. Business is no longer just about being defined by what you do, but it's about giving back and redefining the problems and how we solve them in a way that works for you. I'm your host, Caroline Sumners, and I'll be giving you weekly inspirational stories from business owners who are building business and solving problems. Hello and welcome to another episode of Business is Good. Today I'm talking to Paul Hargreaves of Cotswolds Fair. Now, Cotswolds Fair is a certified B Corporation, which honestly, until I started talking to Paul, I hadn't actually heard of. But interestingly, B Corps are basically a new kind of business, exactly the type of business that here at Business for Good we love, that balances purpose and profit. So they're legally required to consider the impact of their decisions on their workers. Can you tell I'm reading this? Customers, suppliers, community, and the environment. And it's basically a global movement and community of leaders who are driving this business for force for good movement. So it was a really great conversation to have with Paul to hear about how he has taken Cotswolds Fair to be certified B Corp, the challenges that has involved and the impact that that's had on the business. So listen up, enjoy, and enjoy this one.
So I'm the CEO of a company called Cotswold Fair. We're a fine food wholesaler. And it's our 20th birthday this year, actually, so we're 20. I'm also a B Corp Ambassador, which more later on that. And I've just written a book called Forces for Good, which is about businesses that are making the world a better place. And I also do a bit of speaking around that kind of area too.
That topic.
So I wear a few hats, and that's 4 different hats.
Yeah. So, I mean, and actually, as I think I said when I kind of contacted you to say, will you please come on my podcast? It was the piece around the Forces for Good and the is it B Corp or B certified?
Okay, so if you are certified, you're called a B Corp.
Right.
Obviously, the process is the certification process.
Yeah. So can you tell me a bit more about that? What it involves? And even why you did it as a business, I guess.
Okay. So I think for us, we were, and this actually is quite a common story, but I always believe that business shouldn't just be about making money. It should also be about making people's lives better and making the planet better. But until I ran across the B Corporation, the B Corps organization, I didn't realize that there were other people like me. And I've heard this story from others, that we were kind of plowing our own furrow without realizing there were other people in the world who didn't just believe that business was all about making money for the shareholders. So very pleased to run across B Corp. I think I first ran across them in about 2014. And as far as I'm aware, it's the only certification process that judges how good businesses are for the world. So it's a pretty rigorous process you've got to go through in order to become a B Corp. And lots of people don't get near there, to be honest, and maybe have to do a lot more work in order to get over the line. But everything you say you are doing, either for the planet or for people, you have to prove. So you can't just, I mean, there's a term called greenwash, which is happening more and more with corporate businesses now. They want to look good. They want to get more people to buy their stuff. So they look like they're doing stuff for people and the planet. But actually a lot of it's just window dressing. Yeah. So it's unlikely that they would ever become a B Corp because they wouldn't be able to produce enough evidence to get them over the line. So, there's about 220 in the UK. currently, about 3,300 worldwide. And actually, if you add together the turnover of all the B Corps in the world, they're about the 74th biggest economy on the list of countries in GDP. So they're about the same level as Ecuador, actually. It's interesting.
So that's fascinating, actually. So it's actually a kind of a business beyond the benefit of the, what you're doing for the planet and what you're doing for people, and is a business benefit as well to you. Do you feel? I mean, do you think that's why people?
No,
one of the reasons they shop with you, or not?
I hope not. If they're doing it just to make more money secretly, then they probably wouldn't be able to get certified. Now,
yeah,
actually,
one of the criteria not to have.
Yeah, exactly. I've just written an article actually this week, and I sense that there may just be about to be starting some kind of commercial advantage of being a B Corp, because the profile of I don't know if you're probably aware of the climate strike last Friday, actually. Today. And in a very short time before that, they managed to get a plan together. So there's some B Corp digital adverts went up all over London, which apparently 1.5 million saw. They were in stations and places like that. But for most people in the street, B Corp they've never heard of, but I think that's on the cusp of changing. So far we've had no real commercial advantage at all. We supply retailers. Most retailers are only looking at the single bottom line. That most of them aren't interested in the planet at all, actually, sadly. But I do think things are about to change. I think we will see some commercial advantage in the future. We haven't so far, but at the end of the day, anyone who's in it, that's not why they're here.
Yeah.
And that, I believe, and it's there's a chapter on this in the book, if you do prioritize people and you do prioritize the planet, actually a lot of businesses will end up making more profit. So it's interesting juxtaposition, really, because the ones that aren't just focusing on profit and trying to do good stuff, actually long term will be more successful.
Yeah, I was actually at an event yesterday, and the Soil Association were talking, and they were talking about to be certified organic. Okay. And they were starting to say that they can see a economic advantage, not just in terms of, not just the advantages in terms of what it's doing for the soil and what it's doing for the supply chain, but they're saying that they're starting to see evidence that perhaps there is an advantage of these businesses once people really start to understand it, that they are starting to see an advantage for that in their business growth. So it's interesting that you say that, because I think it's possibly a similar. Obviously, it's not, but it's working towards that same goal, isn't it? Doing good.
Yes, and I think consumers have had enough of fat cats. They've had enough of shareholders making ridiculous profits, and they are starting to want to buy into brands and companies that are doing some good in the world. I mean, I was chastened, if you like, to write the book I wrote last year, because I was just sensing we're on the cusp of something different. And the book was published in March, and sure enough, since then, there's been an amazing transformation in people's focus. And we just think of Extinction Rebellion and all the focus now on the climate emergency. That wasn't happening 6 months ago. So I think consumers more and more are going to vote with their feet towards ethical brands, and they're going to walk away from brands that are greenwashing or aren't ethical. So some of those companies will probably go out of business unless they change. So that's the exciting thing. There is now consumer pressure towards good companies and good brands.
Yeah. So you said there's quite rigorous procedure to be B certified. How long does it take you? What sort of thing do you have to do?
Okay. So there's 5 kind of categories that you have to look at. I hope I can remember them all. I should do, shouldn't I? As a B Corp ambassador.
I'm putting you under pressure.
Yeah. So there's governance. So that's company culture, company DNA, if you like. There's community. What are you doing for the local community? There's people, which is about your people and the people up your supply chain. There's consumers. And finally, there is, of course, the environment. So you're scored in all those areas. Now, you don't have to be perfect to be a B Corp, and obviously some companies are much stronger in certain areas than they are in others. So the total possible score is 200. And to become a B Corp, you only have to score 80. But let me tell you, that 80 is quite hard to achieve.
Is it?
Yeah. So the first time we certified was in 2015. We got 84 points. I mean, in a way, we're a dirty business. We're moving nearly 1 million boxes around the countryside each year. So it's much harder for a business like us than, say, if you were putting in solar panels onto roofs, you would automatically get a higher score. So it's harder for companies like us that are normal businesses, if you like, to get a high score. So we had to work hard to get the 84, and then we recertified in 2017, which is what you have to do. It's not like a once in a lifetime certification. Oh, great, got my certificate, we can do what we want. No, you've got to recertify. It's 2, and now it's every 3 years. And the other interesting thing about the recertification process is the bar actually gets higher each time. So we were doing so many more good things 2 years later, yet slightly disappointingly, I will say, we only got 84 points the second time as well. So, and we are recertifying again next year in 2020. So each time we've done actually a lot in those years in between, but we may not score any more points next time, even though...
Does it form... I mean, I'm guessing it informs the whole way that you run your business.
Yes. So initially, it was largely driven by me. I'll be honest about that. When we first certified, I think the nice thing for us over the last few years is that the culture is now that everyone is driving it forward. In fact, the management team is less driving it forward in a way, because we have, within part of what we did 2 or 3 years ago, we set up some change groups within the company, looking at, and there's a couple of environmental ones, a people one, a community one, and it's their job to kind of drive us forward. And the only rule about those groups is no one on the management team can be in them. So they come up with some great ideas, present them, and a lot of them we take up. So the big difference is now, rather than being driven top down, it's our change is coming from everyone within the business, not just the leaders within it.
And do you think that's a fundamental kind of like factor in keeping your certification, but also in making it successful and sort of driving it through the business?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it wasn't a bad company to be 5 years ago, but we're a much better place to work when we were there, and happier, actually. That's the interesting thing, is that we've got a much happier company than we had 5 years ago. And I think it's part of people feel part of the purpose of why we're here, and job fulfillment, and well, we did a survey actually a couple of years ago, which we do regularly. One of the questions on there with a simple yes no answer was, do you enjoy coming to work? And we actually had 100% yeses on that.
That's amazing.
I did have to check whether the no button was working, but it was, so that's all right.
And do you think it has an effect on your recruitment, but B, your retention as well? Or is it too soon to tell that?
Yeah, definitely retention. Yeah, I think now we've got the right people here. Yes, I think obviously a lot of the people that have joined in the last 2 or 3 years have. That's part of the reason they've joined, because they like the fact of working for a company that isn't just thinking about money. So yes, absolutely. And this year we're actually implementing employee ownership scheme as well. So for a discounted rate, employees can buy number of shares in the business, which again helps them feel part of it, and obviously increases productivity and motivation too. So
yeah, no, it sounds really interesting. Is there certain types of businesses that are there any businesses that are excluded from becoming B certified, or is it open to anyone, any business?
That's a good question, and the answer is yes. And I won't remember all the categories, but if you're making arms or producing tobacco,
Can't, yeah.
Basically, stuff that's killing people is you can't be a B Corp.
You can't be an arms dealer and be a B Corp.
No.
But but for most small businesses in this, in the UK, if they wanted to, in theory, they could become a B Corp.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are, until recently, there have actually been quite a high number of very small micro businesses, if you like, that are B Corps. It's probably slightly easier for them to certify, because the more complex the business is, the harder it is to gather all the evidence.
Yeah.
So we're quite a simple operation. We're just buying and selling stuff. But obviously, if you're making stuff, if you've got a retail side to the business, if you've got a farm, I mean, some of our suppliers who are looking to certify have a farming side to their business as well. There's quite a lot more to do if you've got that kind of complexity in the business. But yeah, it's open to all. And actually, whilst of late it has been the larger companies that have kind of raised the profile, companies like Ella's Kitchen, Innocent, Body Shop have all certified in the last year or so. It's probably predominantly smaller businesses than that. Well, actually, 99% of businesses in the UK have less than 250 employees anyway. So that is the majority of.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's one reason why I wrote the book last year. Was I was very keen that normal businesses can do this, and you don't need to be an intellectual or highfalutin corporate business to become a B Corp. A window cleaning business or a plumbing business can be a B Corp just as much as a kind of big corporate or a company with purely ethical foundations like Patagonia. So yeah, very much. It's got, if we're going to see the change that we want to see in the world, it's got to be normal businesses that see this and get on with it.
So why did you go down? I mean, obviously, there's lots of different ways as a business that you can do that kind of like giving back, or that whole kind of like developing the way you do business. Why did you decide particularly on the certification? Why was that important?
I think it's always good to be judged on what you do. It's like financial KPIs.
Yeah.
Each week. Gauge where we are at as a company on that level, and it's good to be, as we're saying, people, planet, and profit are equally important. It is good to have some accountability in the planet and the people side as well as the financial side. So that's probably the main reason. And as I said before, the fact the bar gets higher each time forces us, not that we would probably hold back anyway, but actually we're going to be judged more harshly in 2 years' time. We've got to keep moving forward here. So
exactly.
It's the same with we've just gone carbon neutral actually in August, and we were using an organisation to offset some of our carbon that just trusted us on the figures we produce, and I wasn't happy with that. So we've moved to the carbon neutral certification company, which we are now assessed on that, because I wanted the account. I didn't just want to send in a figure and X tons of CO2. There you go. No, I wanted to actually check we're doing it properly. So so it's the same as that, really, accountability. And also there's the community side. It's good to be hooked up with other companies that are on a similar journey to you. And I always say most of my good ideas, my employers think my ideas are actually stolen from other places. So don't tell them. But Yeah, no,
You're a podcast now, Paul.
And then we have our good ideas nicked as well. So it's
of course, yeah.
It's
Well,
good.
isn't that saying that no idea is a new idea or something?
Yeah,
I don't know.
probably,
There's some sort of phrase about it. Because I mean, as part of my business, I donate to via a company called B1G1, which is, I think it's
Yes.
buy one G1. Do you know them?
Buy one, give one. Yeah,
Buy one, give one. That's it.
Yeah.
And you can select your United Nations sustainability goals that you want to support, and then you set different criteria around how you're actually going to do that. So even as a micro business, which is essentially what I am, I've selected supporting women and education as the two that I'm supporting. And so I relate mine to, so even as a service-based business, I relate mine to, okay, when I increase social media followers or social media engagement, I donate. When I have a annual birthday for the business, I donate more. And so then I pick the kind of like projects around that. So, even as a small business like myself, I can do that. And I think it's important that we do.
Absolutely.
I mean, as I say, just as I want to support sort of women-led businesses, and particularly those in developing countries. So I'm really kind of like heartened by the fact that so many businesses are, to me, it seems like so many businesses are starting to think about that. But I know there's a hell of a lot still that are not. So
yeah, more and more are. But of course, it's partly a function of the population dynamics.
Yeah.
Half of people, nearly, I think it's next year, half of people in the workplace will be millennials or younger. So these things are bound to change, aren't they? As the probably more traditional type business people retire more, and
exactly.
Yeah.
So, how long had you been in business before you went for the sort of like the B certification? Was it something? I mean, was it something that was always at the heart of your business, and you just that sort of like sort of certified it, or was it something that sort of came to you afterwards?
No, well, both actually. So initially, I came from the charitable sector when I started. Is it starting to rain there or something? I came from the charitable sector into the business world. Really, it was an accident in many ways. And I'd been working with a lot of downtrodden people in the inner city. And yes, we were seeing lives change to some degree, but I knew that their lives were really not going to be turned around unless they had employment and some kind of routine to their lives. So when I started the business, initially with someone else as well, actually, 3 of the first 5 people we had were people coming from a troubled background. So we had one guy out of prison, we had one ex-heroin addict, and we had one ex-alcoholic. 60% was probably a little too high in terms of percentages within the company. But so that's where we started. Now, I'll take full responsibility for starting in the right place, but probably, due to the pressures of starting a small business, having to pay the wages at the end of every month, we probably moved away from that heart, if you like, at the beginning. It's easier, to do this stuff. You need a business that's successful and sustainable, and you're not worried about going out of business next week. So it's a difficult line to tread, and we probably fell more towards actually just the business side rather than the other stuff. So I would probably say about halfway in, after 10 years, we started to come back to the business as a force for good dynamic, if you like. And we got involved with an orphanage in Kenya. I started going out there, taking teams, doing balls for our suppliers and customers, raising money, etc., etc. So that would have been in 2009. And then, as I said, it was about 2014 I ran across B Corps, and we first certified in 2015. But I would say that probably throughout, even the more difficult years, somewhere in the DNA of the company was, we're not just here to make money. So that's always been there. We've not been, well, it's partly because I probably hadn't got that culture within the business enough. And we were growing ridiculously fast at some points of that journey. And at that point, all you're doing is running to stand still and recruiting people rapidly just to fill gaps. And we ended up with a lot of the wrong people in the business, to be honest, who weren't going to be going on that journey with us. So that was a painful time, actually, and that was 2014 when, through various circumstances, probably about half the people in the business actually left. It's a bit of a long story. It is all in the book, but probably haven't got enough time here. But we had put it briefly, we had a big kind of meltdown, IT meltdown. It was horrendous. We were letting everyone down. There was complaints coming into the office of a rate of about 100 a day. Complete carnage. And at that point, a lot of the people who weren't committed to the journey we're on actually disappeared. Now, it was a terrible time for the business. We almost went out of business, actually. But the very positive result of all that was the half that were left were the right half, and we could build from there. To be honest, we've never looked back from that very low point. We've been moving the right direction ever since. But it was my fault. We got into that position anyway through some poor recruitment.
But it shows you, doesn't it, the ups and downs of running a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said to someone the other day, I feel like sometimes the appropriate word is relentless, because actually that's what it feels like sometimes, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And it can be feast or famine with what you're doing. And I think unless you're on that journey yourself, you just don't.
No. And I've had two absolutely lovely years because I don't do that much these days. I've got a very good management team, and they're very good at what they do.
I'm sure you do more than when you say you don't do much, I'm sure.
Well, I've got my hand on the tiller. That's it. But I'm not that involved with the day-to-day stuff. But we had another kind of mini meltdown a couple of months ago. So we moved warehouse mainly to reduce our carbon footprint, which it's a 46% reduction. It was the right thing to do. But we had 6 weeks from hell following that move, which was in early August. So we're just coming out of that time, and suddenly I'm in up to my ears again in the problems rather than the joy. So like you said, it is a roller coaster. But I'm a strong believer that in those pressurized times, that's really what forms people. So I can honestly say, as a management team of the business, despite feeling probably absolutely exhausted, to be honest, at the moment, we're stronger, more resourceful, and we will go from strength to strength from this difficult point onwards.
And I think that also the fact that you still embrace making those changes is amazing, actually. Maybe know that some of that's going to possibly happen, but you still go for it anyway.
Well, yes. And I'm not the kind of person that stands still, as anyone here in the office behind me would tell you. They might like us to stand still for a minute, but it's not really it's not in our DNA, actually. So one of our company values is challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
And really, the people I've got here now like that.
Yeah, I think you have to, right? Because otherwise, it's not the place for you to work.
No, that's right.
Yeah. So, are there any? I think it's just a really interesting, fascinating story around that. So, are there any companies in particular that you admire for what they're doing? You mentioned like Body Shop and Ella's Kitchen and stuff that are B certified, but are there any sort of like that you look at and you think, they might be bigger than you or whatever, or even smaller, but are there any that you look at and think, yes, that's what we're aiming for?
Yeah. So sorry to keep coming back to the book, but some of the books about us, but I realised as I was writing it, my editor also told me so, that you need a lot more examples in here of what other people are doing. So there is a good selection in there. And a couple of companies I mentioned more than once in there. One is Timpson's. So James Timpson wrote a recommendation for the book. You probably know that they employ 10% of their employees are straight from prison, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Totally inspirational, actually, and quite funny in a way when you think they're making keys. But
don't they do the street cleaning as well? Is that something that they do?
They do, yes, they do.
Or provide a suit.
They've got barbers, hair barbers now, as well as shoes. That. Yeah. And another one is Cook. You may know the frozen food.
Oh yes, yes.
They've got about 90 stalls, and they also supply their products to lots of other customers, and a lot of our customers. They also have people in the kitchen coming from prison on day release, and they're very, very good at getting their people to realise their full potential. Something that we're copying that they do is they have something called a Dream Academy. So they get people to write down their dreams, and then as a company, they will help them achieve those dreams. Now, that they may not be anything to do with work whatsoever, but they can be work related or they can be personal related. And they have a dream manager there, and I think it's a man. His job is to help people achieve their dreams, which I think is absolutely wonderful, and what employers should be doing.
Yeah, I didn't know that about them. I'm going to look that up. Maybe see if they'll come on the podcast. I don't know.
I'm sure. Yeah, no, I can put you in touch with.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. I mean, I just love that whole ethos around that, and I think, it's I guess when we got, what I'd like to see is some of these bigger companies not doing the greenwashing and looking at initiatives like that. One that I recently saw was, and they're not particularly a big company, I don't think. There's a company called Beko. They make soap, and they're doing a campaign at the moment called Steal Our Staff, and they employ, I think, something like 65 or 70% of their staff are disabled in some way, whether it be visual impairment or what it is. But what they're saying is they need those staff to move on to other jobs because they want to employ more people. So in that, so that they can employ more people.
So they're like a stepping stone.
Yes. So they're doing this whole campaign around, can you steal our staff, please? Can you employ them? Because we want to be able to employ more people.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it?
I saw that and I just thought, that is just phenomenal that's the way they're approaching it. And to me, that's kind of like, how can we all, but I also realize that not every company is in the position that they can do that, right? Because, it depends on what you're producing, what your business is. You're not, always able to do that. But I think if we could all maybe make
yes, it is hard. I mean, in some ways, we've outsourced our warehousing 3.5 years ago, which has reduced our ability to take on the more unemployable people and give them a leg up. So that's, it's the right thing to do, don't get me wrong, but that's it's something we've lost. Having said that, we're in next year, we're opening a retail outlet, so we'll be able to do that kind of stuff again in a different place. So,
and where's that going to be? Is that in your office?
It's going to be in the Bristol area, actually.
Right.
Yeah, farm shop.
Nice. Okay, so I guess the only other question I've got is, even if someone can't go for the, maybe they're just starting out, because there's a lot of people that are small micro businesses, they can't go for the full B certification. Is there have you got any sort of like top tips of things they can do or should do, or how to get started, really, I guess, with having a sort of like a wider purpose?
Yeah, I think the most important, we had a big environmental conference earlier this year, which was absolutely fantastic. And one of the main messages that came out of that was, don't let perfection get in the way of progress. And
I said that to my business partner the other day.
Okay, cool. And I think it's very important to realise that, you know, the problems in the world, poverty and the planet stuff can seem, what possibly can we do to make any difference? But actually, if we all do the small stuff added together, that becomes very big indeed. So everyone can do something, whether it's to do with, you know, paying proper wage to the people that work for you, or making environmental savings at work or at home. And small things added together, if every small business in the UK and the big businesses did several small things each year, the overall impact would be absolutely massive. So that's probably my main message on that side of things. And there are some things we can do tomorrow. There are some things we can't do tomorrow, but we can do next month. There are some things we might have to do next year. But as long as you're always doing something and heading in the right direction, progress happens.
Yeah, I think you're right. Even the smallest of business. I've got another lady that I interviewed for the podcast. She's actually a personal trainer, but she this year has turned her personal training business into a social enterprise. And one of the things that she does, because she's out and about sort of doing boot camps and stuff like that in the parks and everything, she's in Wokingham, she's actually doing sowing wildflowers with seeds in the fields where she's doing the work, where she's doing the workouts, because she's like, you know, we're out in the environment all the time, but we need to improve the environment.
Yeah.
So something even as simple as sowing wildflowers can be done by someone. And I thought that was such a great idea of hers to do. So
yeah, she's just down the road from us then. In fact,
she is.
So one of our projects is this is a good example actually, the Wokingham Food Bank we are linked with. So we give, and it's a tiny amount of money for every invoice. It's 25p for each invoice we generate, which is nothing. We don't notice that, but that is really significant for them. That gives them about 700 quid a month, which they can do a lot with that. So, you know, everyone can do something, and small amounts added together can make a big difference. So that's a good example actually. In Wokingham,
yeah. So if you fancy doing a boot camp, there you go.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of people here who do those kind of things. I'll put them in touch. I'm getting too old. I feel like that as well sometimes. So I'm the clumsiest person ever. So if I was doing outside, sort of running around the fields, if there was a small hole, I would be the one falling over for sure. So okay, well that's brilliant. Thank you so much. I actually, you've inspired me. I'm going to go and look into this B Corp, B certified, and see if in any way I can. I'm sure. Well, as I said, it would be easy for you. It's easier anyway. But do when you produce, do encourage people to buy the book, because there's loads of ideas in there of small stuff everyone can do that can make a difference. So yeah,
brilliant. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to go onto Amazon, and I shouldn't probably order from Amazon, should I? But anyway.
No, it is available from good booksellers as well as Amazon. You better not put that on the.
I'll take that bit out. It's hard though, isn't it? I mean, just on that Amazon conversation, I tried a couple of weeks ago to get a book from someone other than Amazon. Yeah. Went to the bookstore, did all the right things, and they were just, we haven't got it. We can't.
No, mine is actually available on most online.
Oh, that's good.
Bookstores, so yeah.
So how fabulous was that to talk to Paul? I immediately went and looked at the B Corp website after I spoke to Paul, and if I read something from the website for you, it basically says we envisage a global economy that uses business as a force for good, and it's comprised of a new type of corporation, the B Corporation, which is purpose-driven and creates benefit for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. They want to seek, there must be change we seek in the world. All business ought to be conducted as if people and place mattered. How awesome is that? I have decided I am going to try and get my business B Corp certified. I will keep you updated as to the progress on that. But for now, that's it for another episode. And tune in next time when we are talking to James Church from Robot Mascot. Thanks a lot. Bye. Tune in next week where we'll have more inspirational stories talking about moving your business beyond what it is and moving it more towards what you're in business for, what's important, and doing good and changing the way things should be done.